I remember that day like it was yesterday. The day my son, my only child, left me stranded at the airport. We were supposed to be traveling together. A family trip to celebrate my 65th birthday. A week in Italy. My son, Daniel, had planned it all, or so I thought. He and his wife, Vanessa, insisted I come along, saying I'd been working too hard, that I needed rest. I should have known better. When I stepped off the airport shuttle and waved at them from behind my suitcase, I noticed they didn't wave back. Daniel was busy scrolling through his phone, and Vanessa was wearing that cold little smirk I'd grown used to. But I brushed it off. I told myself I was imagining things. I was just a mother excited to see her son again, after all those months he'd been distant. It wasn't until I reached the airline counter that I realized something was terribly wrong. The clerk's smile faltered. This ticket's been cancelled. Cancelled, I repeated, my voice trembling. That can't be. My son booked this for me. She checked again. I'm sorry. It was cancelled this morning. Refund issued to the original cardholder. I froze. My heart cracked open in disbelief. I turned around to find them, but they were gone. My son and his wife had disappeared into the crowd. No calls. No messages. Nothing. And just like that, I was left, alone, heartbroken, and penniless, standing in the middle of that bustling terminal. But here's what Daniel and Vanessa didn't know. That day wasn't going to end the way they planned. They thought they left me behind, humiliated and helpless. But what they didn't realize was, I had a meeting later that day. A meeting with my lawyer. Because long before they plotted against me, I had already started preparing for them. And that's where my story truly begins. Don't forget to like, comment, and hit the notification bell for more interesting stories. I sat there in the airport lounge for nearly 2 hours, staring at the cup of cold coffee in front of me. My fingers trembled, but not from fear anymore, from rage. Daniel was my pride and joy. I raised him alone after his father passed away. I worked 2 jobs, skipped meals, and poured every dream I had into that boy. I paid his college tuition, even mortgaged my small home to help him start his first business. And how did he repay me? By letting that woman, Vanessa, turn him against me. Vanessa had always seen me as competition. She wanted Daniel's inheritance, every dime of it. She hated that he still sent me money monthly, or that I owned the family house. I could see the resentment in her eyes each time she came around pretending to help me clean. The night before the trip, she gave me a hug and whispered, "You'll finally get some rest, Margaret." Now I knew what she meant. When I realized they'd left, I didn't cry. Not this time. I smiled, slowly, bitterly. Because I had a plan. You see, a few weeks earlier, I discovered some interesting documents while sorting through Daniel's old files. Hidden under a pile of old receipts were property papers. My property papers, transferred without my consent. They'd forged my signature. Instead of confronting them, I quietly called my lawyer, Mr. Harris, a man I'd known for 20 years. We began preparing my case. I hadn't told Daniel, but I'd already signed the documents that made me the sole owner of my late husband's trust again. That meeting at the airport was supposed to be the last step before the trip, my final sign-off before transferring everything safely into my name. So when Daniel and Vanessa thought they were abandoning me at that airport, they were actually helping me seal their own downfall. I picked up my phone, called Mr. Harris, and said calmly, "Change of plans, Harris." They played their hand earlier than expected. He replied, "Then it's time we play ours." And from that moment forward, I wasn't just a mother who'd been betrayed. I was a woman on a mission. A mission to take back everything they tried to steal, and make them wish they'd never underestimated me. Little did they know, while they were sipping champagne in first class, I was already on my way to turn their world upside down. When I walked into Mr. Harris's office later that afternoon, he was already waiting for me with a thick brown folder. "Margaret," he said, sliding it across the desk. "Everything's in here. The transfers, the fake documents, even bank statements showing funds from your account to Daniel's company." I swallowed hard. "How much?" He sighed. "Almost $200,000. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. That was my retirement fund, my life savings. I looked out the window, tears blurring my vision, and said, "Let's make them pay." Mr. Harris nodded. "Oh, they will. I've already filed a motion to freeze all joint accounts in your name and your late husband's estate. Once the court sees this, they'll have nothing left to spend." I smiled faintly. "Good. Let's start there." Then we planned the rest, the legal strike that would leave them stunned. Meanwhile, I knew exactly how to make my next move: public humiliation. They wanted to make me invisible. I'd make sure everyone saw who they really were. When Daniel and Vanessa returned from their luxury vacation, they didn't even call to check on me. Instead, I received a short text. "Hope you're okay, Mom. We'll talk soon." Talk soon? By then, the local news had already started covering a domestic fraud investigation involving a small family business, my son's business. Their faces were everywhere, and I made sure of it. All the while, I remained silent, just like they left me silent at the airport. But inside, I was smiling. Because karma doesn't need a ticket, it flies first class. The day of the hearing, Daniel finally saw me again. His jaw dropped when I walked in, head held high, wearing the same pearl necklace his father gave me years ago. He stammered, Mum? You're here." "Oh, I'm more than here," I said, sliding the folder onto the table. "I'm the reason this hearing exists." Vanessa tried to speak, but I cut her off. "You forged my name. You entered my accounts. You thought I'd never fight back." Their lawyer looked panicked. The judge reviewed the evidence and frowned deeply. When the verdict came, Daniel and Vanessa lost everything they'd stolen, and more. Their accounts were frozen, their company was seized, and restitution was ordered. When we left the courtroom, I didn't gloat. I simply turned to them and said, "You left me stranded, but I found my wings." Months later, I moved into a beautiful home near the coast. Not out of spite, but peace. I finally learned that the sweetest revenge isn't just taking back what's yours, it's living well while they crumble under their own greed. Daniel called once, months later, crying and apologizing. I listened. Then I said, "Son, I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean access." And I hung up. Sometimes, life tests us in cruel ways. But I learned that day at the airport that losing what you thought you needed can lead you to everything you truly deserve. They left me with nothing, but I rose with everything. And that's the story of how betrayal turned into justice, and heartbreak turned into freedom. They left me at the airport with no money, but they had no idea I was headed to meet my lawyer. It had been 6 months since the courtroom victory. To the world, I was just another retired woman living quietly by the ocean. But behind the calm smile and morning tea rituals, I was watching every move Daniel and Vanessa made. They had lost everything publicly: their business, their cars, their reputation. But instead of learning, they were still blaming me. Daniel told the press I manipulated him and set him up. Vanessa claimed I stole from my own son. Let them talk. The louder they shouted, the quieter I became, because I had a new plan in motion, one that would strike deeper than any courtroom ever could. You see, while their company was seized, the assets had been transferred to a holding firm to be auctioned off. And guess who had a silent partner at that auction? Me. Mr. Harris helped me set up a new company under a discreet name, M. Grace Holdings. It sounded harmless, simple. Nobody connected it to Margaret Grace, the woman they betrayed. And with one signature, I became the new owner of my son's fallen empire. The same company they'd built on lies, greed, and stolen money, now legally mine. I remember the day I signed the final papers. Mr. Harris smiled and said, "It's poetic justice, Margaret. You didn't just take your money back, you took their pride." I nodded slowly. "No, Harris," I said. "Not their pride, their lesson." I renamed the company Phoenix Horizons, a symbol of rebirth, from ashes to something stronger. I hired new staff, honest workers, even rehired some of the loyal employees Daniel had fired when he took over. When people asked if I knew the previous owners, I'd simply smile and say, "Once upon a time." Meanwhile, Daniel and Vanessa were struggling to stay afloat. Their accounts were drained. Their friends had abandoned them. Vanessa's designer friends stopped inviting her to brunch. Daniel's business partners vanished overnight. They tried starting a new company, but no investor would touch them. Their names were tainted. One afternoon, I received an email from Daniel himself. It read, "Mom, things have been hard. We made mistakes. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. I almost replied. Almost. But then I remembered that cold morning at the airport, how he walked away, not even glancing back. So I deleted it. My silence was my answer. 6 months later, my company was thriving. I had turned the ruins of their failure into something flourishing. And that's when fate handed me the most delicious twist of all. A top real estate firm reached out, offering a partnership deal with Phoenix Horizons. I was thrilled, until I saw the names of the representatives attending the meeting. Daniel and Vanessa Reed. My heart skipped, then steadied. This was divine timing. I told my assistant, "Set the meeting, but don't tell them who owns the company." The following week, Daniel and Vanessa walked into my office, nervous, tired, desperate, but pretending confidence. They had no idea the woman sitting behind the frosted glass conference door was me. I watched from the tinted side mirror as they whispered, rehearsing their pitch. Vanessa's once perfect hair was dull now, her diamond ring replaced by a simple band. When the clock struck 2, my assistant opened the door and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Reed, the CEO will see you now." They stepped in and froze. There I was, sitting at the head of the table, pen in hand, my company logo gleaming behind me. "Hello, Daniel." "Hello, Vanessa," I said softly. "It's been a while." Vanessa's face went pale. Daniel's voice cracked. "Mom, this can't be real." "Oh, it's very real," I said. "Please, have a seat. Let's discuss your proposal." They couldn't speak. The silence was heavy, almost sacred. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the desk. "You came here to do business. So tell me, what are you offering?" Daniel stammered, We were hoping for a partnership." I smiled slowly. "A partnership? With the same woman you left stranded at the airport?" Their faces fell. Then I stood up. "No, Daniel. You don't get partnerships anymore. You get consequences." And with that, I slid their proposal back across the table, stamped rejected. They left that office humiliated. And for weeks, my company's success dominated headlines. Phoenix Horizons soars under new female CEO. Nobody knew the full story, except me. But revenge wasn't my goal anymore. Not entirely. I'd already won. And yet, there was still a small ache in my heart. Because beneath the betrayal, Daniel was still my son. One evening, I found a handwritten letter on my doorstep. No name, no address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It read, "Mom, you were right about Vanessa. She's left me. I lost everything. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I just want you to know, I miss you. Love, Daniel." Tears filled my eyes. For the first time in months, I didn't feel rage, just sadness. I took a deep breath and whispered, "Maybe this was the lesson you needed." Weeks later, I visited Daniel. He was living in a small apartment now, working part-time, humbled but alive. When he opened the door, he looked shocked to see me. "Mom, I just came to check on you," I said. He hesitated, then hugged me tightly, crying. "I'm so sorry. I thought money made me powerful. But you—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "You're the strongest person I know." I smiled faintly. Strength doesn't come from revenge, Daniel. It comes from surviving what was meant to destroy you. From that day on, I forgave him, not for his sake, but for mine. I walked away free, proud, and whole. My empire was thriving, my heart was healing, and my peace was finally mine. And as I stood by the ocean one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky gold, I whispered to myself, "They left me at the airport with no money, but I left them with a lesson they'll never forget. Never underestimate a quiet mother, because the woman you betray today might own your tomorrow."